So we'll go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome. My name is Karen Bucht. I work for the Environmental Leadership and Training Initiative, or ELTI, at the Yale School of the Environment. And joining me today is my colleague Saskia Santamaria, who will be helping to facilitate the session. ELTI is an initiative of Yale University School of the Environment, which receives generous support from ARCADIA, a charitable fund of Lisbet, Rausing, and Peter Baldwin. We are a global team who works to train and support people from all sectors and backgrounds to restore and conserve tropical forest landscapes using strategies that support biodiversity and livelihoods. And we are really pleased to welcome you today to the 6th lecture in our 8-part series on capacity development for forest landscape restoration. This series aims to share knowledge and lessons learned from the perspectives of our staff, affiliates, and alumni worldwide. So today's presentation will be given by our speaker, Jillian Bloomfield, and is entitled Designing and Monitoring Place-Based Online Restoration Courses. If you've attended any of our other webinars, you probably recognize Jillian already. She is the coordinator of ELTI's training program. She's been facilitating these webinars, and she's worked at ELTI since 2010, designing training materials and online learning curricula, and implementing courses on tropical forest restoration in productive landscapes. Jillian holds a Master of Forest Science from the Yale School of the Environment, where she focused on restoration of native biodiversity, forest health, and ecosystem services in human-modified landscapes. So Jillian, we're very happy to have you today, and welcome. So a few notes before we go into Jillian's presentation. We will have time for discussion and questions at the end. So throughout the presentation, please submit any questions you have using that Q&A feature. And you can do that at any point during the presentation. We're also going to launch a poll to hear about your level of experience with online learning. So once that comes up, please take a minute to fill it out, and we'll come back to the results at the end of the talk. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Jillian. Jillian, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Karen, and it's a pleasure to be here today to speak with you. And so impressive how many people logging in from different parts of the world, and fun to see some of our past and current course participants. So as Karen mentioned, my name is Jillian Bloomfield, and I work for the Environmental Leadership and Training Initiative at Yale University as ELTI's online training program coordinator. I'm pleased to share this talk with you today, designing and monitoring place-based online restoration courses. So, when you think about capacity development in the environmental field, or specifically the field of forest landscape restoration, what do you think of? Does it look like this? As you've seen so far from our webinar series, or you may have experienced from your own work, effective training and capacity development is so important, and it's rooted in elements like integrating theory with practice, being context-specific and place-based. You might hear phrases like experiential or involving learning by doing, building skills, and facilitating connection and collaboration, among other things. And there are so many mechanisms to deliver these kinds of capacity development activities, whether it's through courses or workshops, peer-to-peer exchanges, demonstration site visits, field activities, etc. But what if your primary mechanism for capacity development is online? How would that work with trees, with restoration, with conservation, such context-specific and site-specific themes? So this presentation is designed to share some insights on just that from ELTI's nearly 10 years of experience developing, delivering, and monitoring online capacity development activities. Here. So whether you're forced to think about these things because of the realities of COVID-19, the pandemic, or because you've seen online training as an opportunity for a while now, my hope is that this talk can serve as some inspiration for how to use online courses effectively as a delivery mechanism for building capacity for forest landscape restoration. I'll start by giving some background on the history of ELTI's experience with online capacity development and our models and philosophy. And then we'll go through some concrete strategies for how, even with a global audience of participants from different countries, different cultures, different contexts, you can still facilitate a learning experience that is rooted in a sense of place, tailored to helping participants relate to what they're learning to specific contexts and goals. And we'll go and how you can still facilitate learning by doing in an experiential way. And then I'll talk about our theory of change, or specifically our theory for how we're trying to affect change on the ground, and some strategies to monitor these programs to understand if we're meeting our goals and adjust efforts based on what we're learning. So let's get started. So ELTI was started in 2006 with the launch of our training and leadership programs. In collaboration with local partners, the training program started entirely in the field. ELTI's training program offers intensive field courses, workshops, farmer-to-farmer exchanges, working with partners in local languages to really build the capacity of people working on the ground to develop different strategies for conservation and restoration and to implement them. Eventually, these field areas solidified into ELTI's training landscapes in Panama, Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And in these landscapes, ELTI and partners use a network of demonstration areas, interpretive trails, field exercises, and farm visits to conduct the training activities. Similarly, our leadership program was founded to support program alumni and support them to apply what they learn and to share the knowledge that what they know and what they've learned in our courses. So activities in the leadership program include mentorship, small grants, technical assistance, community organizing, and other activities. And it's through this leadership program that ELTI has really been able to help participants of the training program, of the training courses, take their work to the next level, to apply their work through projects, initiatives in the field, further develop their leadership, management, and fundraising capacity, and share what they know and what they've learned through alumni-led trainings. So with all that as a context for where ELTI was started and has built over the years, in 2011, Professor Mark Ashton and at Yale and other members of ELTI's steering committee, with the generous support from ARCADIA, decided to complement, not replace, but complement ELTI's amazing work in the field with an online training program. And it was a very exciting time at ELTI, full of opportunity, but also full of questions. Is there interest? How can we train people in ELTI's very practical themes in an online environment? What would that look like? Will ELTI's target audience of tropical practitioners even have enough access to the internet for an online course? So after a bit of reflection, we knew that what this program would not be. It would not be your typical online course offered at US-based institutions. So whether it's big universities or online-only degree programs, there are definitely models out there for online learning for undergraduates and graduate students. But this is a very different audience. Capacity development is so different from undergraduate education, and we knew at ELTI that we had very different goals. We knew it'd also be very different from your typical workplace instructional video or training. Thank goodness. So things like safety training, workplace ethics, many of you probably have experience with this, and that is a field of e-learning all in itself and definitely not related to what we were trying to do. And lastly, in an online program, it's not simply recording talks from speakers at Yale or putting them online. We have YouTube for that. There's so much amazing content out there, but that's so different from what we were trying to do. What we can do with online training, an online training course for capacity development, is so much more. So we knew we had an opportunity and we were not sure what it would look like. So where did we start? with a needs assessment. We did market research, had feedback from LT participants, conducted interviews and surveys, and most importantly, and related to why I set up the timeline to share about LT as a whole, this needs assessment involved visits to LT field courses and training landscapes to see what the essence was of our training and leadership programs, and then start to brainstorm what key elements could we try to incorporate using an online teaching platform. So with all that in mind, with the inspiration from LT's field and training and leadership approach, we sought to design online training that, despite being online, is rooted in on-the-ground training needs, a blend of theory and practice, has personal projects and mentorship. And then you can add in some added benefits of online, such as the ability to bring together diverse speakers and case studies. And being a course, the structure of an online course is so different from a field course. It's not 1 to 2 days in the field or a whole week. It can span for many weeks, and that allows time for practical assignments. So in 2013, we launched our first online course. It was a leap of faith. We were testing it for the first time. It was an introduction to tropical forest restoration in human-dominated landscapes of Latin America, offered in Spanish. And I'll get back to the specific themes and structure, but it was a 6-week course divided into 6 weekly modules. And what did we learn? We learned a lot from that first offering. We learned that the interest was very much there. It was a fully subsidized by ARCADIA course, and so we had 375 applicants for 25 spots. We learned that internet availability was not as much of a barrier as we feared. We got feedback even that this training made learning accessible to those who were unable to typically do so in person. And that was very interesting for us. So for example, a participant from a very remote area shared with us that normally she cannot travel to her capital city for these types of comprehensive training activities. So the course was accessible to her in that way. Or we had a different participant who shared that he couldn't take a week off of work to be able to do a field course. And so this accessibility aspect was something that we learned and that we had not necessarily expected. We had early struggles with technology, live sessions, but I will say since 2013, technology has been getting better and better, as evidenced by you all here in this webinar today, logging in from Philippines and Myanmar and a whole bunch of Colombia, a whole bunch of different places. So luckily, technology is changing. So we've continued developing online courses in different languages on different themes. And with those activities, we've really solidified a model that involves high quality educational content from multiple disciplines and perspectives, the opportunity for interaction and feedback using synchronous or live and asynchronous or self-paced tools, and assignments designed to help a participant reflect on the material and start articulating how they could apply what they're learning. This shows, again, the model with the educational content, the interaction and feedback, and assignments designed specifically for application. So to date, we've delivered 24 online courses to 622 online leaders representing 64 countries worldwide, and we've continue doing this today. In 2018, LT and IUCN launched blended courses. By blended, we mean a combination of online and field activities. And Karen, who introduced the webinar today, is our coordinator of blended and Africa training activities. So these blended courses have taken different models. Sometimes we have a field experience happening first, followed by online activities. Sometimes we integrate it, so we have some online activities with the field and then more online activities. Sometimes it's at the end. There's so many different models, and we've been testing them and adapting it to the different needs for different courses. For example, in a recent course we had with IUCN, we had at first an in-country workshop that involved that more skill building and peer-to-peer exchange in person. Then a field visit to go see something in person and interact with local stakeholders in person. And then followed by an online course where we had the space to get in depth into different themes for participants to get support from experts and to develop FLR, forest landscape restoration implementation plans. So to date, we've had 11 blended courses, and the field component has been in 10 different countries. Next, in 2019, we launched our year-long online certificate program. This program involves 4 8-week online courses, a capstone project course happening throughout, and the opportunity to come together and learn in the field at an ELTI training landscape in an optional field course. This program has been an amazing opportunity for us to take everything we've learned to the next level and engage with really excellent environmental leaders around the world who are taking the time for a whole year to dive deep into this comprehensive program. So that brings us to today, where we have a full range of online activities, including short courses, blended courses, the online certificate program, and a philosophy guiding this whole program that we're using online learning as a tool for capacity development. But that capacity development and the application of knowledge, that's the focus. And we're also celebrating different training modalities. So using the internet where we can bring together diverse perspectives and cultivate networks amongst people who normally might not be interacting, and then offer blended training to bring in the benefits of both field and online learning environments. So that brings us to, with everything we've learned, what are some tools that you can do if you're thinking about online capacity development activities for forest landscape restoration? And brings us to those initial questions. How can you make online learning place-based when you have diverse participants? And what are the tools to facilitate learning by doing in an online learning environment? What do I mean by diverse? Our online course participants can come from many different countries and different sectors at different scales with different social and ecological histories driving land use decisions in their areas. They have different motivations for joining an online course or online training program. So if you're looking to engage in capacity development for online participants, you can't be expected to be an expert in everyone's local context, especially not in such a site-specific and place-based theme like restoration. So what we recommend is to design the curriculum and teach a process, not attempt to provide answers or restoration prescriptions that one would expect to be relevant in every circumstance for every participant. What we do is we try to teach a way of thinking. What are the key questions to ask? What's the theoretical basis that can then guide decision-making in the field? For example, in our 6-week online introductory restoration course, the one I mentioned before that has definitely evolved and changed over the years, the essence has remained the same, that the participants are going through a journey of learning during the course. First, we start out the week 1 with the ecological dynamics, the natural history, what's happening with forest ecology and succession. We talk about the social dynamics on a landscape. The range of different land use strategies for restoration and strategies for integrating restoration with sustainable production, and then a process of monitoring and evaluation, all building toward the completion of a customized management plan for a site of professional or personal interest. And in the larger structure of our 12-month online certificate program, we still maintain that idea of teaching the process. It's just extended out over a longer period of time with a deeper dive into these themes. But we still have the 4 different subject courses that they're going through and the capstone project where they spend the year evaluating the course themes and actively relating it to their current and future work. Within the structure of the course as a whole, the content itself is designed to present a range of options, of perspectives from different disciplines, a range of experiences from around the world. And accompanying that range, we try to teach approaches to evaluate, select, and prioritize different approaches within the overall umbrella of forest landscape restoration. So for example, an important concept in FLR is that restoration interventions can vary. They can range from passive methods to active methods. They can range from strategies to restore forest in a strictly forest sense, or they can be strategies to integrate trees into agricultural lands and other production activities. And it goes beyond just land use management options. So for example, with the range of different funding sources available, we can't tell participants exactly how they're going to raise the money they need for their different activities. But we can expose them to a variety of ways in which restoration is funded and help design experiments that help them research and analyze which ones are applicable to the specific projects that they have in mind. One consideration is that place-based does not mean you ignore other places. Sometimes people come into a course thinking it will only be relevant to them if the examples and case studies are from their specific region and context. Of course, that's helpful for some of the case studies to do that, but one of the points of feedback we hear all the time is that the diversity of examples, the disciplinary perspectives, and case studies all bring value and are eye-opening. So like in this case, if you have a participant from Honduras, that participant can be inspired by a case study from Colombia and incorporate those findings into Honduras's national planning processes. Or a participant in the Philippines can integrate experiences shared by international participants and instructors into project planning. So the course content and structure give participants questions, ideas, and a process to work through. Then it's the participants themselves who bring the place into place-based learning. It may sound cliche, but they bring in their place. They have to ask the questions to themselves and their colleagues. To investigate and analyze the social and ecological dynamics where they're working, and to evaluate amongst the whole range of strategies what's relevant to them, and to engage in action planning. We design the assignments to help the participants relate the content to their context, but they're the ones who are have either the existing now or have the potential to be their local the best place to share what strategies they should actually do. So we design these assignments to help participants relate the content to their context, practicing options from their own perspective, practice analyzing these options from their perspective. Some assignments can stand alone, others lead towards a final project, so participants leave the online course or series of courses with the skills they've developed, so that even if they're not in a position right now to implement things, or they know new projects are going to start in the future, or they're changing careers, they've built those skills so that they can do that analytical process later. And then some of the assignments are built around producing actual outputs, like presentations or documents, where the participants have already articulated how the content relates to their work and what types of actions they recommend. So they leave with a product in hand, if you will. So it's through these assignments that you can really facilitate the learning by doing aspect of an online course or online capacity development program. And there's so many possibilities for practical assignments. Really, the sky's the limit. I'll just share a few examples. So one is literature reviews. So that's something that is a value of LTs, to help connect the science and the practice. And so we have assignments where we guide participants to find out what's been published out there, written, that's relevant to their project sites, and to build their skills to continue consulting science and scholarship during their work as practitioners. There are many different activities participants can do related to stakeholder identification and analysis. And in this example here, one of our course instructors, Dr. Amy Vedder, is holding a live session after participants have done a homework assignment. That assignment was to do a social network analysis. And so after giving written feedback, here she's hosting a live session to offer collective feedback to all the participants about some of the main things seen in the assignments, and give them a chance to engage in peer-to-peer discussion about their work. In some of our courses, we have actually required site visits. Participants are given a prompt at the beginning of the course, and asked sometime within the window of the course or within a few weeks to physically travel to their project site and look around and do an analysis of the site, produce an analysis, written document, a summary of what they've seen in the field and what they've learned from talking to different stakeholders. And there's so many other activities, from financial skills and tools and conceptual models, and then the management plans themselves, where they end, like I said, they can end the course or end the program with a management plan or an action plan for forest landscape restoration at a specific site. Lastly, I want to highlight the importance of facilitation and instructor feedback. So the instructors offering guidance, support, and feedback is crucial. Also, all of this that we've talked about is orchestrated by a facilitation team that is intensely involved in the teaching process. These facilitators serve as mentors. They offer guidance and assistance. They offer flexibility and understanding when issues arise. These online participants, they're dealing with real world issues, with hurricanes, with agrarian strikes, with all sorts of things happening in their areas. And so as mentors, we offer flexibility and understanding. But we also offer a sense of accountability, that someone's there and someone cares and wants them to be successful in the program and is helping them, guide them to how to complete the course requirements. And this is so important in an online environment, to show to the participants and give them a sense that somebody cares, that we care, what they are doing, who they are, and how they're doing in the course. So it's with all of these elements combined that we can really make online capacity development high touch and results driven. So in this last section, I'll talk about, to get to the results, I'll talk about our theory of change and how we monitor our online courses to understand what those results are and what we need to change. So everything I've mentioned as strategies for place-based curriculum design and online course facilitating learning by doing, all that is critical to our theory of change. What is the theory of change? One definition is that it's the thinking behind how a particular intervention will bring about results. Sometimes it's referred to logical frameworks, sometimes results frameworks, or sometimes those hold distinct definitions. But the main point is that there's a rationale and a thoughtful way of how you're articulating how you get from action to results. And this is really important because there's a common pitfall in environmental work. People present their activities as what they're going to be doing, and it's going to reach their goals. And maybe I'm going to do this, and then I get to, and it'll save the world. But there's so much, it's so nebulous. That connection is very tenuous if you haven't articulated or you haven't planned out how that's actually going to connect. And the same risk goes with e-learning. You can create beautiful, amazing online videos, but does that automatically mean that the viewers are going to implement, use that information to implement change on the ground? So that's where theory of change comes in. So it can help a program assess whether there are clear connections between the needs on the ground, the activities they're doing and planning, the outputs of those activities, or the things that are still under our control, and then the things that are not fully under our control, how the target audience will start to use those outputs if they're changing behaviors accordingly. We hope they're tied to our inputs and immediate outputs, but at this stage, there are a lot of questions. And then finally, how we get to the broader goals, the final outcomes, the bigger picture targets. So this is a hypothetical developed by ELTI's former assistant director, Desiree Lopez, as she was helping us as ELTI as a whole develop a theory of change. And now I'll start talking about for online courses. We knew from our needs assessment that we wanted that people wanted knowledge and skills to advance and implement FLR. And we knew from our mission that we're trying to enhance individual and institutional capacity to develop, propose, and implement strategies to restore tropical forest landscapes. So we can start with online materials. The output is that people access those materials, and we still hope everything goes forward and leads to the direction of the final outcomes. But these question marks are really big. So what can we do? And remember, if there's one thing you take away from this talk, an online course is not just about the content. There is content, and the content is really important to be developed thoughtfully and with implementation in mind. But unlike just content available on the internet, the nice thing about a course is that it takes place in a moment in time. People are coming together in a moment in time within the structure of a course with specific deadlines. There's a cohort of people coming together, a sense of camaraderie. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the practical assignments, instruction, and facilitation. So if you add that in with completing the coursework, or here first even, inputs of the materials, the assignments, the feedback, the mentorship, everything that can go into a high quality, high touch course, then the outputs are even stronger. People are accessing the materials and completing coursework, creating action plans, doing self-reflections, participating in skill building exercises. And then that can lead us to have an influence on the intermediate outcomes as well. So that by the time they finish the course, if they've done the coursework, they've already demonstrated that they have an improved knowledge, skills, and awareness. And they've demonstrated that they know how to apply what they've learned or create an action plan to do so. And that can help us really start to influence and see how that will connect from the intermediate outcomes to the parts that are still not under our control. Like, will they actually implement it? Will they actually apply, have behavior change? Those things are not under our control. So there are still questions, but the questions are a little bit smaller. And we've seen from what we've learned that, and the results from our monitoring, that people are making those connections. So after the course, we've heard from alumni about how they're implementing what they've learned with new restoration sites, new training activities, sharing what they've learned, and proposing new policies, strategies, and plans to different decision makers. So how do we know if our theory of change is happening? I alluded to it, but specifically we'll talk about monitoring. What are the results of your activities, and are you meeting your objectives? And do you need to make adjustments? So there are a lot of different monitoring tools and activities out there. I already talked a little bit about our needs assessment and a theory of change, or assessing your program theory. I'll just give a few examples to finish this off with what ELTI's been doing for process evaluation and impact evaluation for our online courses. So one tool out there are course exit surveys. So we use these at the end of every course to gather participant perspectives on the course itself and how they plan to apply and share what they learn. We've conducted alumni surveys and interviews, and these help us understand what elements of the course they found most useful afterwards, and ways in which they've used the outputs of the course, and how they've applied and shared what they learned. So as an example, this is a figure from a training series we conducted in 2016 and 2017 with IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. We conducted surveys and interviews 3 to 6 months after the course and learned ways in which the participants were already starting to apply and share what they'd learned. So they did that in different ways, designing and implementing forest landscape restoration projects, improving national assessments and strategies, strengthening the capacity of other stakeholders, raising awareness, and then promoting change within their organizations. We've conducted quizzes on key concepts before and after a course to measure change. We're still refining this method, especially because so much of what they're learning is hard to measure in a quiz. But it's a way to have a tool that serves as an objective indicator of knowledge change, especially for our medium touch and lower touch courses where we have fewer time-intensive project outputs. We've engaged in storytelling to capture the outcomes from the experiences and viewpoints of the participants themselves and to support our ability to assess our theory of change. We've learned a lot from these stories. They can be found on the LT website at our stories on lt.yale.edu and in our Leaders in Action booklet. I will mention, however, that storytelling is a very useful tool for process evaluation, but it is not an objective activity. So it's a combination between monitoring and a communication tool. We're not capturing the full range of perspectives from all alumni. And then finally, LT recently conducted a rapid internal assessment of the Tropical Forest Landscapes online certificate program. And in this assessment, we took a 360 review of the program and sought ways to assess and plan and then implement ways to improve the participant experience, to streamline delivery, and to ensure the long-term sustainability of the program in the future. And so many of the findings of that review process we were already able to implement for our 2020-2021 cohort, which was year 2 of the program. So we use all these tools for process evaluation in our reporting and communications, making adjustments to the program, designing new courses, and then to give us inspiration for new models for online capacity development. And so one final example of that is an impact evaluation that we conducted in 2015. It was a pilot impact evaluation, a way to test our assumptions about the participant engagement and participant experience. So we offered a fully online course, fully subsidized by ARCADIA at the time, and we received 158 applications. And we could not accept everyone to that high-touch online course, so we took it as an opportunity to test different models. I'm happy to follow up more details later about the experimental design, but the summary is that we tested 3 different models of delivering the program. Our typical high-touch delivery, a medium-touch delivery with content and practical assignments, but no live components and no expert feedback, and a low-touch model that had access to the content and ability to do self-reflection assignments or peer-to-peer discussion, but no project, no live sessions, and less facilitation support. So in the medium and low-touch models, there was a large drop-off between acceptance, enrollment, engagement, and those who completed the course. Interestingly, a few who did engage fully to complete the program expressed that they had a very enriching experience, and they had practical ways in which they could envision that they would implement and share what they'd learned. So that really speaks to the quality of the content, but they only get that quality of the content if they actually do it. And that kind of it confirmed our assumption about the importance of key elements that go beyond content alone. And it also gave us insights into which adjustments to make to maintain engagement and maintain impact in medium and lower touch course offerings. So for example, we recently held a course in collaboration with our Neotropics training program where we knew that people would, with everything going on with the pandemic, they only would have 2 to 4 hours a week to work on it. We wanted to have it be a medium touch course, really. And so we were able to adapt our model to keep, based on what we learned in the impact evaluation, to keep elements to maintain engagement, to make the project work available but optional, and to keep the sense of community and camaraderie and accountability. And I will say that we're going to have at least 93 to 100% completion rate. So that is awesome. So just waiting on one for which flexibility is key. So finally, I'll bring us back to this slide from the very beginning. Online training is not a replacement for the valuable benefits of face-to-face interaction, field courses, and workshops. But don't be afraid of it either. There's so much you can do with online training to help equip participants worldwide with the knowledge and tools to advance restoration activities. And so with that, I'm happy to address any questions you have. Thank you to all the people who've contributed to our online programs over the years. And thank you all for listening.
Great, thank you so much, Jillian, for your presentation. So as a reminder to everyone, you can enter any questions you have using the Q&A feature, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can. We also just want to remind you that we do record this presentation, so if you came in late or you want to refer back to it, we will be posting it to our website and on ELTI's YouTube channel. I'm also going to go ahead and share the results of that poll we launched at the beginning. So it's great to see we have lots of you that have done lots of online courses. So we got a lot of experts in the room with us here today. But we also see there's some of you that this is a new concept, and at least one of you who is still skeptical. So we'd love to hear more from you. Please share your questions. Please share why you're still skeptical, and we can discuss some more. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into some questions. I think one very interesting and very timely question that was posed is, how has COVID-19 and the pandemic affected online learning, especially with ELTI, but overall?
Sure. It's been an interesting time. I would say that it's really exploded, and that everyone is needing to deal with this, and everyone's doing it. So our field programs, for example, were faced with the unfortunate situation of having to pause everything. And so we've worked to collaborate with them to implement combinations between what we typically do and what they typically do, and try to expand those horizons. But I would say the pandemic's also provided an opportunity in that everybody is innovating right now. There's like a saturation of online things. There's this webinar, there's webinars every moment of every day. And so I think that really re-emphasizes the fact that you should be thinking about online as a tool for what people actually need.
Mm-hmm. Another question we had is, some people have asked about the costs, and I know that depends. So if you want to give some tips and guidance about how it depends,
Sure.
How much an online course will cost?
Yeah, it's very variable. But I will say that similar to field courses, people think that you're going to take people think that an online course will be so much less expensive than the field, therefore we'll do it. And you can do that. You can, and that's part of the medium or low touch models we're trying to offer to make everything accessible as well. But I will say that if you are trying to incorporate the expert feedback, the facilitation support, and all of those strategies for replicating the richness of a field experience in an online experience, or not necessarily replicating, but like trying to mirror to some extent. Those add to the cost. So the more results driven, the more high touch we have, the higher the costs become. And so that's something that we try to communicate with donors, is that there's relationships between our ability to connect, or our ability to offer courses that get us further on that theory of change process and the costs. But like I mentioned with the impact evaluation, we're trying to use what we've learned to figure out what are the elements to keep and not keep when you try to reduce costs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a very similar question and kind of tagging on to how much does it cost? Another participant asked what the resources and time frame are required. And I know it depends as well, but I was wondering if perhaps you could speak more broadly in terms of if any of our attendees here were to go forward and develop their own online course or collaborate, what kind of key recommendations would you give them?
For resources and time frames specifically?
That and beyond, yeah.
Well, the good news is that everyone with the pandemic is getting used to making online content. So, and we're very much used to adjusting our expectations. So the resources involved and time involved can vary, because you can have a very fancy studio and record high quality video with fancy equipment, and all that is great, and we've been blessed to have access to some of that at Yale. But we also all the time help train people on how to record themselves from remote places using software that's either free or very affordable, like $100 forever to purchase the recording software. So there is a whole variety in like how much resources and money you can put into creating content itself. The other stuff that's not the content, it really has to do with the structure, like we're saying. People's time is worth something. And so that's something to factor in. And that's something with online learning that people often forget. Whether it's the experts, whether it's the facilitators, you have to factor in that people's time is worth something, and a lot. But as far as creating content goes, that's a way that it's really been normalized, that people equalized, that people can create content. And I think we've all adjusted our expectations. If anything, I like when things aren't super highly produced in a studio. It's more authentic. I shared that with a professor the other day who was uncertain whether it was okay that she was giving the live session from her dining room table. And I was like, you know what? You're inviting these international participants into your home. And there's an authenticity to that. So I wouldn't get too caught up on needing to spend a lot of time and resources on the tech side, and would focus more on the learning side. Again, with that theory of change, what are the learning objectives? What do you want people to do afterwards? And try to direct your resources to that.
And I'm gonna jump in with one more, because it's very much in line with kind of this question of best practices for developing online training. What recommendations do you have in terms of scheduling, number of participants, sort of the logistical aspects of course delivery?
So we found in certain environments that kind of the 15 to 20 people range for a course, for a high-touch course, even up to 30 really works nicely. You really can get, it's enough participants that if they can't come to all the synchronous sessions, or it's enough participants that it fills it out and they can give enough feedback to each other, but it also makes it kind of more reasonable for us when we're offering this high touch experience. We have been able to adapt our online certificate program. I think we've had 62, 61 participants in that, and we've been working on ways to keep that high touch involvement. That's also involved adding to our facilitation team for some of that. So I would say that's kind of a practical range. For lower, medium or lower touch courses, though, if you have less of the individualized feedback, you can go way up. And you could have a course with hundreds of people, but then the nice part for, like, if you develop opportunities for feedback and interaction is to divide people into groups and help them still have a cohort, a smaller cohort, and a smaller sense of camaraderie with a subgroup of people.
Another participant has a question regarding equity and inclusion. He says, do you think online courses are more conducive to equity and inclusion? How is your program addressing the environmental climate justice aspects of restoration?
That's a great question. We should analyze specifically from that perspective. I will say we have a whole range of participants. I think our online certificate program has, last year we had most of our participants from Sub-Saharan Africa and a large group from Latin America. And we offer scholarships that really help make our programs accessible. So that is something that's been a strong value from the very beginning, was to have that scholarship support. As far as analyzing like the specific participants and how that relates to different justice issues and equity, I think that we have asked the questions, but that's a great suggestion for an analysis that we can further. Karen, do you have anything to add on that from your perspective?
I mean, I think like a key issue with the inclusion is also just the initial identification of participants. And sometimes when we're working with partners, participants are pre-identified, and we might not be giving the most equitable courses because participants who were pre-identified are at the top of their organization, and often men, or often, with a certain background. So thinking broadly about, who needs the training, and not just thinking it has to be the head of the organization, but thinking at all levels and all backgrounds and all disciplines, I think starts to get at that opportunity to, include equity in courses.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And in the ones where we have open calls, we've found such a range. And like I mentioned in the talk, like people who said that this program made learning more accessible to them than programs that involved either travel or time off of work and all of that. But then, like Karen said, yeah, in some cases we found, especially when a partner picks their key people, sometimes it's a little less diverse, or but that's also something that we've started communicating with the partners or with the sponsors to say, I know this is a priority of yours. Here are some suggestions for how you can make sure the people you're nominating, maybe allow an certain entity to nominate 2 people or more than 1 person. Or we did a course with the World Bank where we purposely set it up, and this was their idea, to have 1 World Bank staff representative and 1 what they called like counterpart, somebody working on the ground from the communities that they work with. And so both of them came together to the course and they collaborated on their projects.
So we have a couple questions on the monitoring side, which might be nice to touch on before we wrap up. One is on how do we evaluate outcomes beyond intermediate outcomes? And she was asking if it's through process evaluation, surveys, interviews, and also a little bit of clarification on the rapid assessment that you mentioned for the certificate program.
Sure. So for the rapid assessment, basically we looked at the results from all those different tools we had used, plus our experience talking to the participants themselves, talking to different contributors, and having an outsider who had not been so actively involved in the course review things. So we kind of tried to gather all of that and then come up together with ideas for quickly, what can we do to adjust our program? What kind of adaptive management can we implement in the short term, and then come up with some ideas for longer term strategy. As far as sorry, the other question to clarify for monitoring, could you repeat that part?
Yeah, so it was how we evaluate outcomes beyond intermediate outcomes.
So that's tricky. And that's one thing we learned really early with our monitoring activities. In 2015, we did a survey of our the alumni that had taken the online courses from 2013 and 14. And we had questions all about how many hectares have you restored? And all those like dealing with how many trees planted and all that. And the answers we got were all over the place. They were really hard to interpret. This was not designed as a statistically significant survey, so it was hard to draw any conclusions. Some people were using hectares to say their whole project area, not the specific area with the tree planting, or it was a mess. And so at first we were feeling really guilty about this. Like, what do we do? Have we failed if we can't prove hectares? And that's really where, as a whole program for ELTI, like I mentioned, we engaged a process with our former assistant director on doing a theory of change and planning for monitoring as a whole group, and really sought to adapt our expectations and work with our donors for what they accept. And luckily, they've been very supportive that what we can measure is that area that I mentioned about like people in the position or feeling like that they have had their capacity developed. It's about the people, because that's the stage at which we're acting. There are ways of measuring change, but they involve expensive impact evaluations with studies with counterfactuals of groups, control groups. We would have to have like a similarly region to look at land cover change where they received a treatment, and a non-treatment group looking at that area. And that's the kind of thing that big research institutions and PhD studies can do. But as a capacity development organization, there was no way that we could factor that into our monitoring activities unless we were to get some kind of big grant specifically for that.
I think it's also important to note that, as we think about monitoring of kind of the far-reaching outcomes of our activities, is it does require a bit of a shift in mindset, because we all would love to say this activity equals this many hectares restored. But in many cases, people are already restoring. And what we might be seeing is higher quality restoration or other outputs that, so we often see this many number of trees planted, but we're teaching in our courses sometimes trees don't need to be planted and they can regenerate naturally. So I think that's something else that it gives us a chance to take a step back, and we do have to force others to kind of shift that mindset as well in terms of what an outcome is.
And I think we have time for one more question, which will be a participant asked if you have any suggestions or advice in how to get females involved in forest landscape restoration, because it's in his country, it seems that they only sit back and allow males to work more. Have you noticed any differences in terms of online training?
I will say for the parts that are in our control in terms of the participants that we accept, when we do our open calls, we've encountered a wide variety of people, and gender has definitely been much more equitable than we thought. The interest is there, and people are signing up. So the people that we're impacting and training in that way, I would say might be even to some extent have more balance than sometimes initiatives on the ground in certain countries. I also think representation matters too. So if you look at our team right here, or all of ELTI, our courses, the experts we choose, that we've had cases in which the people that are speaking as professors, as professionals, as experts, we'll have a whole panel of women sometimes, or 3 women and 1 male, where for some participants and in some countries that is eye-opening for them. And that has been really interesting as well. And I think it shows to some of the strengths of ELTI and some of the strengths of the Yale School of the Environment, is that the representation of women in positions of power and as experts is very high. So that can influence, but there's still, of course, a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot of work on the content that we can have on that area. We have some content in our courses on gender inclusive restoration, gender responsive stuff, but that's usually like one lecture out of 100.
All right, thank you, Jillian. So unfortunately, we have run out of time. So I'd like to thank Jillian again for a wonderful presentation and this really interesting discussion, and to all of you as attendees for joining us from around the world. As we wrap up, I would like to emphasize some opportunities for online learning and some other opportunities from ELTI that Jillian touched on in her presentation. First off, we will be launching a call for applicants to the one-year online certificate program that Jillian mentioned, Tropical Forest Landscapes, Conservation, Restoration, and Sustainable Use, in the coming weeks. So this program, again, it features Yale faculty members and speakers from around the world. So if you're interested, please do visit our website or send us an email and sign up for our mailing list to be the first to know once our applications for next year's program are open. We also have an upcoming online short course on agroecology and agroforestry in our 3-part Spanish course series. And the enrollment period for this will be open soon. So if you are interested, please visit our website at the link here, or you can also contact Saskia Santamaria at Yale.edu for more information. This is also something we mentioned during our last webinar, but if you haven't already, please take some time, check out our newly launched Tropical Restoration Library. This site is an online multidisciplinary resource that is really for to support you in your work on restoration, training, research, and implementation. So to check it out, you can go to restoration.lti.yale.edu. And lastly, we will be taking a break for the holidays, but we hope to see you back for the next session in the new year. The next presentation in our webinar series will be on January 28th, 2021, with Joy Compendio and David Nidell of ELTI's Asia team, and they'll be presenting on the benefits and challenges of field training. As always, if you're interested in learning more about ELTI, please check out our website, lti.yale.edu. And at the bottom of our webpage, you can sign up for a newsletter to learn about our recent and upcoming training opportunities. We're always very happy to connect with you, so please feel free to reach out to us by email at any time. So thank you again to everyone for joining us. We hope you all stay safe and healthy and wish you a very happy holidays. So take care and see you in the new year. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining.